Charlie. We're ready to rock.
Have you ever been in a group, a gym, a church, a network marketing company, a wellness community, a relationship where the love felt overwhelming at first, where you felt seen in a way you never quite had before?
Like, comment, and subscribe.
The people were so warm, so certain, so completely sure of their path that some of that certainty kind of rubbed off on you. And then, slowly, subtly, having questioned anything started to feel like a betrayal. I'm not necessarily talking about a compound in the middle of nowhere with a charismatic man in a robe telling you the world is ending.
Smash the like button.
I'm talking about something that looked, felt, and sounded completely normal. Something you chose willingly. Something that, if I called it a cult in your face right now, you might get a little defensive about it. So here's the thing. Nobody joins a cult. And that's not me being provocative. That's one of the most agreed upon findings in cult psychology. According to cult expert and former cult member Stephen Hassan, who spent 2.5 years inside the Unification Church before his family had him deprogrammed. What the fuck? No one is recruited into a cult knowing it's a cult. They think they're joining a community, a movement, a family, a path. The cult mechanics come in later. So today on Unusual Practice, we're going deep on why cults work, not just historically, but right now in 2026. On your phone, in your feed, in communities you probably don't even recognize as high control. We're talking about the psychology of belonging, the neuroscience of manipulation, and why the idea that I'd never fall for that is one of the most dangerous things you can ever think.
What are you talking about?
Right. So let's demolish the first myth immediately. The image most people have of a cult member is someone who is already broken, already vulnerable in an obvious way, mentally unstable, emotionally damaged, not particularly bright, easy prey for an easy trick. But that image is wrong. Demonstrably researched, peer-reviewed, wrong. Research consistently shows that most cult members come from middle-class backgrounds, are highly intelligent, and have no history of psychological illness prior to joining. The profile that actually correlates with cult recruitment isn't a broken person.
Huh?
It's actually a transitioning person. Individuals are most commonly drawn in during times of personal crisis, like loneliness, breakups, health problems, or social isolation, when recruiters provide a powerful sense of belonging, security, and connection. Think about that. A breakup, a job loss, moving to a new city, starting university, losing a parent. These are not unusual life events. These are everyone's life events, which means the window of vulnerability that cults target is not a rare exception. It's a recurring feature of being human.
Ta-da!
Any one of us is susceptible to periods of vulnerability, and therefore we all have the potential to be manipulated into following a person or group we've come to trust during a moment of weakness. The research also dismantles something else we believe, that we would recognize the cult immediately if we were in one. 3 models attempt to explain why people join cults. 1, the deliberative model. People join because of what they think about the group. 2, the psychodynamic model. People join because of what the group does for them psychologically. And 3, the thought reform model. People join because of what the group does to them through systematic manipulation. The truth, as usual, is all three, and none of them involve the person walking in with their eyes open. Cult recruitment is not a design flaw in human psychology. The same things that make you a good friend, a devoted partner, a committed community member, loyalty, trust, the capacity for belief, the hunger for belonging, are the exact qualities exploited by high control groups. Your best traits are the entry points. So, let's talk a bit of numbers, because this is where it stops being something that happens elsewhere and starts being something that's happening on your street. In the United States, researchers estimate that up to 2.5 million Americans have been involved in a cult at some point in their lives. That's roughly the entire population of Chicago. And that's just the people researchers know about. Dr. Stephen Eichel, former president of the International Cultic Studies Association, estimates there are currently up to 10,000 active cultic groups operating in the U.S. alone right now. 10,000, y'all. Most of them so deliberately invisible that law enforcement doesn't know they exist until something goes wrong. In the UK, The Independent reported in 2022 that there are over 2,000 active cults operating freely across Britain, calling it a hidden epidemic that the government has actively failed to address. Parliament has raised it in early day motions. Nothing substantive has been done. France is the one country in the world that took this seriously enough to create an entire government agency for it. It's called Miviludes, the Interministerial Mission for Vigilance and Combat Against Cultic Abuses. Their most recent report, published April 2025, found that reports of cultic abuse to the government more than doubled between 2015 and 2024, from 2,000 to over 4,500 cases in a single year. So 75% of those cases had nothing to do with religion. They were wellness groups, life coaches, and personal development programs. In Australia, estimates put the number of active cults at over 3,000. In 25, the Victorian Parliament launched the country's first ever formal parliamentary inquiry into cults and coercive control. The fact that it took until 2025 for any Australian government body to formally investigate this tells you everything about how invisible these groups have been allowed to stay. South Korea, on the other hand, deserves its own story because it has more self-proclaimed messiahs per capita than anywhere else on Earth.
What?
Guys, that is not a joke. That's a documented cultural phenomenon rooted in the trauma of Japanese occupation, the Korean War, and decades of military dictatorship. Experts say periods of national crisis create exactly the conditions cults thrive in: uncertainty, broken institution, a desperate hunger for meaning. South Korea's most notorious cult export, the Unification Church, the Moonies, is estimated to have between 1 and 3 million followers worldwide, with its largest concentration not in Korea, but in Japan, where it has between 50,000 and 70,000 believers, more than twice the number in its country of origin. And finally, let's talk about Japan, where in 1995, a cult called Aum Shinrikyo released sarin gas on the Tokyo subway, killing 13 people, injuring nearly 1,000, and permanently changing how the world thinks about what a cult can do when it gets enough money, enough belief, and enough silence from the outside world. So, where were we? Oh yeah, right. This only happens to other people. Every cult, regardless of ideology, geography, or century, runs essentially the same operational playbook. It is so consistent across completely unrelated groups that the psychologists have been able to map it with absolute precision. And it starts with love bombing.
Ah, my little darling, it is love at first sight, is it not? No?
Cults shower potential recruits with affection, attention, and praise, creating a sense of warmth and acceptance that can be difficult to resist, honestly, especially for individuals experiencing loneliness or a lack of validation. In practice, this kind of looks like you attend one event and 20 people act like you're the most interesting person they've ever met. You get called, texted, invited. You feel, and this is the word survivors use over and over, you feel chosen or seen or special. Here's the neuroscience of why that works so brutally efficiently. Social acceptance activates the same dopamine reward pathways as food and sex. Your brain doesn't distinguish between genuine connection and manufactured connection, it just knows. These people make me feel good. It files that under safe, under home. And the more your brain associates that group with safety and reward, the harder it is to become critical in view of them. Then comes information control. Cults control the flow of information, preventing members from accessing external sources and fostering an insular, self reinforcing worldview. This doesn't always look like confiscating your phone, guys. More often, it looks like people outside this community will not understand, or that criticism comes from a place of fear, or your family is threatened by your growth. Every piece of outside information gets a pre installed filter that disqualifies it before it can be properly evaluated. You're not being told what to think, you're being given a framework that makes you think. You're thinking for yourself while systematically eliminating any thought that challenges the group. This is the mechanism Stephen Hassan spent 45 years studying, and it led him to develop what he calls the BITE model. BITE. It's a framework examining 4 areas of control: behavior, information, thought, and of course, emotional control. The BITE model identifies how authoritarian groups recruit and maintain control over people and should be used alongside what Hassan calls the influence continuum, a spectrum running from healthy persuasion to destructive mind control. What makes the BITE model useful is that it's not just a cult checklist, it's a spectrum. And when you run certain workplaces, certain relationships, certain online communities through its criteria, things start to look a little bit weird. But more on that in a moment.
Ever feel like the world's built to keep you small, distracted, and shallow? Unusual Practice with Charli rips open those cracks through neuroscience, quantum weirdness, and hidden cultural truths while showing you how to think deeper, connect stronger, and heal what society broke. Get your uplifting dose every week, reset your perspective, and start believing in yourself again. This isn't advice. This is a wake-up call.
All right, so people get love bombed in, the information gets controlled, the critical thinking gets quietly switched off. But here's a question that stumps most people from the outside: why don't they just leave? Why don't these people just walk away? And the answer to this question is where the psychology gets really, or maybe very, dark. Because by the time someone recognizes the problems, if they ever do, several things have already happened inside their mind that make leaving feel psychologically impossible. The first is identity fusion. Over time, the group doesn't just become where you spend your time, it becomes who you are. Your sense of self has been rebuilt around the group's beliefs, language, and worldview. Leaving the group doesn't just mean losing friends. It means losing yourself, your entire identity, your values, purpose, your understanding of reality. It was constructed inside this community. Walk away from it, and you walk away into a void. The second is the sunk cost fallacy. Members who remain often do so due to profound emotional barriers, spiritual indoctrination, and practical obstacles alongside the psychological weight of the sunk cost fallacy. You've given years, you've given money, relationships, career opportunities. You've defended this group to people who warned you about them. You cut off family members who questioned it. Admitting it was wrong doesn't just mean leaving. It means accepting that a significant portion of your life was spent inside a lie. The brain will do almost anything to avoid that conclusion. And the third is installed fear. By creating a culture of fear and shame, cult leaders manipulate members into conforming through public shaming or ostracizing members who question the group and rewarding those who are the most devoted. Former members describe this as having phobias about leaving, a true visceral terror that leaving the group means spiritual destruction or social death or literal harm. That terror was deliberately placed there. It is not irrational. It's a manufactured emergency response that fires every time the person considers the exit door. I had a friend who struggled getting out of that cult group by them just simply proposing a long letter that he needs to write and go in circles and cartwheels to different countries in order to redeem his money back. That should never be the case in anything you decide to purchase. So leaving is rarely straightforward. Many experience lingering psychological ties, shame, trauma, and serious challenges reintegrating. People who leave cults don't walk into freedom. They walk into grief. Some identity crisis, the loss of every relationship they built inside. The world they thought they understood no longer makes sense. And often, no one on the outside understands what they've been through because the outside world still thinks cults are for broken people and the survivor doesn't match that description. All right, here's the part where I ask you to do something you're not so comfortable with. Now, I want you to forget Jonestown, forget the robe and the compound and the isolated farm. That version of a cult is not gone, but it is not where most of this is happening anymore. Social media influencers and online gurus can now create the illusion of a personal connection with thousands or even millions of followers simultaneously. The infrastructure that used to require physical proximity, the meetings, the community, the leader's charisma landing in real time, now operates at scale through a screen for free. A growing number of self-help influencers on platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube have developed cult-like followings where followers become emotionally dependent on the wisdom and teachings of these figures. Access to true self-improvement is gatekept behind paid content. Emotional manipulation and isolation from others who may question the beliefs is normalized, and a high demand for financial and emotional commitment leaves followers dependent on the leader. The language is chillingly familiar.
You're not ready to understand.
You're being manipulated by outside influences.
You need to trust the process.
2 hours later.
These are not phrases from a 1978 transcript. These are phrases circulating in wellness communities, self-improvement circles, and political movements right now, today. In February 2025, the EU's Europol issued an official warning drawing attention to the rise of online cult communities, noting that digital platforms were being used to normalize extreme behaviors, extort victims, and radicalize individuals, posing a serious threat to public safety. And the wellness space deserves its own story here because it is arguably the most successful cult recruitment pipeline of the modern era. Think about it. You've got a charismatic leader with a following, exclusive knowledge that mainstream sources don't want you to know, A community of true believers who all speak the same language, gate-kept levels of access unlocked by financial investment, criticism from outside the community pre-framed as jealousy, fear, or spiritual immaturity. You might notice wellness influencers suddenly sharing conspiracy content or spiritual gurus incorporating anti-vaccine rhetoric into their teachings. This blending of ideas is particularly dangerous because it appeals to people's desire for both spiritual fulfillment and secret knowledge. Run any of this through the bite model slowly. Okay, so I want to be clear about something before I give you the tools, as I always do. Not every tight-knit community is a cult, guys. Not every charismatic leader is manipulative. Not every group with shared beliefs and rituals is high control. Community, shared purpose, even devotion to a cause, these are very healthy human needs. The problem is not belonging. The problem is belonging that costs you your ability to think. So here's the framework. Run any group, any community, any relationship, any movement through these questions.
Let the games begin.
1. Does this group welcome questions or punish them? Healthy communities can survive scrutiny. High control groups cannot. If asking a sincere question about the group's beliefs, leadership, or practice is treated as disloyalty, spiritual immaturity, or evidence of outside contamination, that's a signal worth taking seriously. 2. Does this group encourage outside relationships? Or does it erode them? A group that consistently frames your outside relationships as threats, your family as people who don't understand, your friends as low vibration, your partner as someone holding you back, that is systematically reducing the number of people who could give you an honest outside perspective. That reduction is not accidental. 3. Is failure always your fault? You see, high control groups maintain their credibility by making the member responsible for every negative outcome. The belief system works. You just didn't believe hard enough. The method works. You just didn't apply it correctly. If every result of following the teachings that falls short is explained by your insufficient commitment rather than any limitation of the system, that is a closed loop. And closed loops protect leaders. They do not serve members. Please remember this. And finally, what happens when people leave? And this one is the most revealing. If former members are consistently described as damaged, bitter, spiritually lost, or agents of outside forces, rather than people who simply made a different choice, the group has installed an automatic discrediting mechanism for any future testimony against it. It is worth asking, why would a healthy community need to preemptively destroy the credibility of anyone who walks away? So here's what I want you to sit with. Cults work because human beings are wired for exactly the things they offer: belonging, certainty, purpose, community, the feeling of being chosen. These are not weaknesses. They are the deepest needs we carry.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And in a world that has become increasingly atomized, increasingly uncertain, and increasingly lonely, the demand for something that meets those needs is not shrinking, it is growing. Mind control is not just in cults. It is in our relationships with our parents, with our children, in our romantic relationships, in the articles we read, in the groups we join, in the algorithms we scroll through.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
It is so slow and subtle that we don't realize how easy it is for it to take over. We think it would be obvious that we would know immediately if someone entered our mind without our permission. But unless we've had the experience, it is not easy to notice. The protection I'm asking you to garner isn't paranoia. It isn't refusing to join communities or trust leaders or believe in things. The protection is staying connected to your own thinking, keeping the people in your life who are allowed to challenge you, noticing when criticism of a group is pre-framed as invalid before you even heard it.
This is the most unusual practice. Rethink what you think you know with Charli.
Holds still work because the human need they exploit has never gone away. The question isn't whether you're vulnerable. The question is whether you know it.
Hi, it's me. Leave a message.
If this one landed differently, if something in here described something you recognize in your past or your present, I would love to hear from you. Find me on TikTok at unusualpractice.up or on Instagram at the Unusual Practice Podcast. DMs are open. This is exactly the kind of conversation this show exists for. If you like this episode, please support us by subscribing, liking, commenting, or even sharing the episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and sometimes it is smart to rethink what you think you know.
Mom, somebody just followed me.
You can fool some of the people all of the time, and you can fool all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool Mom. Hand me your phone and go to your room.